Hey, welcome back to another video. I have the brand new MAC Studio Radiance foundation to try here. If you're like me, maybe you haven't used a MAC foundation in a really long time, but this formula just sounded so good to me. It's a serum power skincare packed formula. It comes in tons of shades, is sensitive skin, dermatologist tested, non-comedogenic, and so many other claims. And since it's a very pricey foundation as well, we're gonna see if this is gonna be worth the money. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's get into the details of this foundation. I picked up the shade NC5. Some of the more fair shades were sold out, so we will see how this shade ends up working for me. But I believe it is the lightest shade that they're selling. It's called Very Light Beige with golden undertones for lightest skin. And this foundation comes in a ton of shades. There's 56 total shades to this foundation. So it's called their Studio Radiance Serum Powered Foundation, which is a buildable, weightless, 24-hour hydrating foundation that smooths texture, evens tone, and blurs the look of pores. It also has like a crazy amount of claims on the Ulta website. It says it won't cake, crease, settle, or cause breakouts, 209% increase in instant hydration, 33 skincare ingredients, 12-hour radiant long wear, hydrates immediately and over time, strengthens the skin barrier, protects against pollution, water, sweat, humidity, and transfer resistant, dermatologist tested, and non-comedogenic and safe for sensitive skin. So here's what the bottle looks like. It's sort of the classic MAC packaging, which is a glass bottle with a pump, which is really nice. Has the gold font on it. I've not used a MAC foundation in a very long time because I do have more sensitive skin. Usually their foundations just do not work for me, whether they have an SPF in them or just some other ingredients. At first I wasn't really drawn to this because I was like, oh, it's probably gonna be too light and glowy for me. But then I realized I do actually like serum, like natural looking foundations more than I wanna admit to myself. I love that it's made for sensitive skin. It has the skincare benefits in it. I really like the trend that we're on sort of now, where we're judging foundations by like, you know, what do you offer in terms of the skincare benefits, not just like what does it look like on and how long does it wear. We're sort of stepping up a little bit. It's like we're wearing something on our faces every day, maybe bring some beneficial ingredients to it. So off the bat, love that it has tons of shades, love the ingredients, and we'll see if it stands up to all of those claims because that was a lot. So we're really gonna put it to the test today, but let's go ahead and start applying this. First, gonna start with one pump, show you the consistency, which is quite runny. This looks like it might be a little bit light for me. Again, this is the shade NC5. I'm gonna use this with a sponge. It said you can use your brush, fingers, or a sponge, so they didn't really have like a specific way that you need to apply it. So I'm just gonna start with a little bit and we will see how far that gets us. Yeah, this might be a little bit light. No scent that I noticed, which is great. I didn't notice any fragrance in the ingredients, so it doesn't really smell like a typical MAC foundation. I mean, that blended out basically like a dream. It kind of just melted into my skin, clearly evened out my skin tone. It's not as glowy as I was expecting and also has more coverage, which in my book, I really love that. So I'm just gonna use whatever's left just to build it up a little bit more. Seems like a formula that's gonna be very like customizable, like you can build it or shear it out. I'm building up to be more of like a medium coverage. And by the way, that was just one pump that we used on this half of the face, not including my forehead, but really good difference here. Some of you are always like, Lindsay, you have cool tone skin, not olive skin, but it's moments like these where I feel like you can really see, like I have this like yellowish greenish tone to my skin, and when I wear a foundation that doesn't have that, it's pretty obvious. Like it matches my face, but it does not match the rest of my body. And this one has golden undertones, just like needs a little bit more. So maybe I will try a different shade. I feel like NC11 might be a good pick for me. This one's just a tad light compared to my body and just need like a slight more goldenness to it, but this is so great that they have such a fair shade with golden undertones. I mean, 56 shades I think in this foundation, so should be able to find something that matches you. The consistency of this, by the way, it's definitely thin. It kind of feels like a thin gel. With the amount of product I'm using, at least with this sponge, it is giving me coverage. Like I was just expecting it to be a little bit more sheer. I guess I'm so used to trying like clean serum foundations that are usually so much lighter coverage. And then I'm gonna take another half of a pump, and this should be good for my forehead. Even though this shade is looking light for me, I think if I put just like a slightly more yellow powder on it, probably make this work. But if you are even paler than me, but you don't necessarily have cool undertones, I think this would be a good pick if you have more like neutral golden skin. Other than the fact that this is a little bit too light, this looks incredible on the skin. It is exactly the type of finish that I like. Like, it's not as glowy as I was expecting it to. Honestly, like this really pretty satin finish. It looks incredibly skin-like, which I think with these serum foundations, it's like that's what it should be, not like overly glowy. Gave me really good like medium-ish coverage with the amount that I used. You could definitely share this out, probably build it up even more. You can sort of see my redness slightly peeking through. This is like the perfect amount of coverage that I really like for every day. It's not irritating my skin in any way, and I'm just really excited to see if this will wear well. I would love to have a new foundation that actually wears on me, because that's sort of been my struggle lately. Now let's go ahead, and for concealer, I'm going to use the Rose Ink Concealer. I feel like this would be the only one that's like light enough to go with this foundation. It's the shade LX010. Like, there's a shade comparison. This is a super fair concealer, and the foundation is even lighter than this. I'm going to try to keep this just under the eyes so we don't really like disrupt the wear of the foundation. To set, I am going to lightly set this foundation with the Dermablend loose powder. I'm really familiar with this. It's super thin, and when you do a light layer, I feel like it really just like shows the foundation wear, and it's not the powder itself that's doing anything. So I just lightly set the under eyes. I'm just gonna look and make sure that everything is blended out. Nothing's like settling or acting weird since I applied it, which is a good sign. So now I'm going to take a light layer of that powder on my powder brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and lightly set this. Like I mentioned with this shade, I would want to put like a slightly darker yellowish powder on top of this, but I don't want to alter the foundation's like performance too much, so I'm just going to use this very translucent basic powder. Even being set down, I feel like this like skin-like glow is still showing through. Like, this looks so gorgeous, I can't explain it. Since the foundation is so light, I feel like I can really go in with the bronzer, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to use the Chantecaille. This is the Real Bronze in the shade Serena. I love this. If you didn't see on my community tab, Chantecaille gave me my own early access for you to use for their Cyber Week Black Friday sale, so you can shop it before anyone else. I believe the code is Lindsey25. I will have it linked below if you wanted to pick up anything before it sells out. This is one of my favorites. This bronzer works really well for my skin. So I'm just taking that on a fluffy brush, and I'm just gonna start to build up that dimension back to the skin. It's actually kind of fun to have such like a pale base to work with because I can add in a lot of warmth. Ideally, I would like it to match me a little bit better though. Ulta's already started their Black Friday deals, so probably gonna keep an eye out and see if they have any deals on this foundation, and hopefully a different shade will come back into stock. If I end up liking the formula, I'll have to pick up the NC11 shade. For blush, I want to stick with a powder, so I'm going to use my classic RMS Beauty French Rose powder blush. Love this shade and formula. This is looking so good. It's giving me like original Ilia True Skin formula and like Bite Beauty foundation, which have been some of my favorites that are no longer available. The Ilia True Skin is still available, but they have a new formula that's, I don't think, as good. Just like this lightweight gel feeling, but really nice medium coverage, just beautiful. And I feel like this House Labs silver highlight's gonna go really good with just the paleness of the base we have going on. This is the shade Moonstone, by the way. I'm gonna use this on a duo fiber brush. Yeah, the skin is looking so pretty. I hope it wears well though. With the bronzer and blush, it's starting to like, you know, meld in with the rest of my skin a little bit better. We'll see if it oxidizes, we'll see if anything changes. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up my eyes, and then we'll be back for the first check-in. Went ahead and finished up my eyes, and I also have this like darkish brown lip liner on because I really wanted to use this Rose Ink lipstick that I have that is called Eloquent, which is a really beautiful purple. It looks intense, but it almost has like a sheerness to it, and I think it would just go good how pale the skin is today. This formula is really nice and thin and almost feels balmy. Like, it feels like a tinted lip balm, but not as moisturizing as that, but also not like completely matte. And this combo, I feel like, is actually really flattering. Really pretty, like winterish fall lip. I had not tried these formulas previously. I've tried the lip crayons, but this is really nice as an everyday color and formula. Just super comfortable. I feel like this is one of those looks I need to redraw my freckles on. I think the skin is honestly looking incredible so far. It set down really well. It is 1:12 right now, so we're really gonna fully test out these claims and wear time. I actually am really liking how pale this is. It definitely doesn't match the rest of my body perfectly, but I'm kind of liking being pale. It's like I can never find foundations that are light enough, so I'd prefer something lighter than something that's darker. Let me know below. I feel like for me, lighter foundations are just easier to correct with a darker powder versus something that's darker. It's like I could mix in a white, but then I'm like, you know, doing too much. I'm gonna insert some clips, close-ups, and natural light. I feel like this foundation is gonna look beautiful in natural light. We will see, but as I mentioned, I'm also gonna really test out the claims of this foundation because it's said to be sweat resistant. I'm gonna work out and see if it holds up because it does have this more like satin skin-like finish. I have a bit more oily skin and I do get pretty sweaty, so we will see if anything starts to, you know, bunch up in a weird way or start to get cakey or wear off. So far, so amazing. It looks beautiful on the skin. Like I can't describe how well it's sitting over my texture and was just the perfect amount of coverage. And it literally feels basically like nothing. It feels really, really thin and comfortable on the skin. Also forgot to mention, but Rose Inc is also having their Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal a little bit early. So it is currently going on if you want to grab anything before they sell out. I think they're having 30% off. I will have to check and put it in the description. But if you wanted to pick up anything from the brand, I use their concealer and this lipstick. I will have that below. We're gonna go ahead and really put this puppy to the test and I will see you at the next check-in. Bye. Basically done with my workout now, and besides being sweaty on top of the foundation, like I just looked at it in the mirror and it looks basically the same as it did before. I'm gonna be sweating even more, so we'll see if it holds up from then. You can't really see it that well on my phone camera here, but yeah. Just showing you that I'm getting sweaty throughout the day with this foundation on to see if it's sweat resistant because it did claim that, and I'm like, is it really? It's glowy and sweat resistant. We'll see about that, but so far it's looking fine. Now officially the end of my workout and I am literally dripping sweat now. So I'm gonna try to dab it off and then we'll just see if like anything transfers off. Yeah, definitely a little bit there. So even though we got that little bit of transfer, I'm definitely like way glowier now, but it still looks really good, like on my texture. A little bit of like lines here, but I think that's just the concealer. But in terms of like this area, which tends to start to wear down the most on me, especially with sweat, looking pretty good. We'll see if it continues to wear, especially now that I've added a lot of sweat to the situation, but it's said to be sweat resistant. So in terms of that being completely true, I don't feel like it like came off like when I was sweating, like the makeup was running. So I feel like that is sweat resistant. Sweat proof's like a whole nother thing. It did sort of come off when I dabbed my face, but it wasn't running and it's still completely on my face. So I don't really have much to complain about. Here we are for the final check-in. It is 9:13, but I really put it through the test with working out with it on and just still wearing it throughout the day. So let's take a closer look, see what we got going on. Just to start, overall, it looks really good, I think. It looks very skin-like still. So in terms of where this area of my face is usually like the problem area, it has worn off of my nose, but you know, when I'm literally like touching it, of course it's gonna come off. So that's like not the foundation problem. But in this like chin area, I get this with a lot of foundations where things will start to bunch up, but I'm looking at this and I see maybe like a little bit of it, but it's very, very slight compared to almost every other foundation that sort of like bunches in this area of my face, because I do have a lot of like scarring and texture there, and things, especially if they have like silicone in them, they'll just start to like slip around. So it's doing that ever so slightly, and sides of the nose looking really good. I feel like I'm usually a little bit more oily on the sides of my nose, so it's kind of interesting that with this foundation it's not really like peeking through as much. Rest of the skin where I like don't really get oily looks exactly the same basically as when I first put it on. I was also wearing this hat for probably about half the day and I don't feel like it even took any makeup off of my forehead. The only other thing I'm noticing is right on the tip of my nose, it's slightly wearing off. So there's sort of those minor things that happens with almost every single foundation. It's just like our skin, just as the day goes on, our skin oil starts to mix with the foundation, and sometimes that will really not work well with the foundation formula. But I feel like this foundation formula, like it's really melding well with just what happens with my skin throughout the day. Like I feel like it did warm up to the skin and look even more skin-like than it did when it started, and I can tell that there's some slight wear to it but it is much better looking than almost every other one of my foundations by this point in the day. Like I feel like it's wearing in a way that looks similar to my skin texture, which is really hard to explain. Like it just looks like my skin, which is so interesting. Oh, another thing. Smile lines, very minimal creasing in the smile line, which is another thing that just happens with so many different foundations because I do have these like deep creases. So I see like a very tiny line of product there, but it is looking good. I think one of my favorite things is the finish of this foundation as well. Even at this point in the day, it looks so healthy without looking greasy. I don't know how they did that, but it is really beautiful. It also doesn't feel very like dewy or like oil based. It feels like it's like dried down, sort of like a normal foundation, but it has this like satiny glow to it. It's reminding me of the Maybelline skin tint, but if the skin tint had a little bit more coverage and wore really well, it would basically be this. I also want to mention that my skin, like it feels very breathable, like I worked out in it and everything warmed up and I got sweaty, but I don't feel like it like trapped anything in my skin. Like it just feels so comfortable, like I mentioned. So I have not been this happy with a foundation in a really long time. I think it is so pretty. Can't wait to keep using it as an everyday foundation. It doesn't seem like it's gonna wear for like a ridiculous amount of time, which I'm fine with for an everyday foundation. I'm like, if it looks this good by the end of the day, I am totally good with it. Another big point I think is also the amount of shades they have. This one I'm kind of like getting used to throughout the day. Could probably do better with the NC11 shade, but you could probably find a shade that'll work for you in this foundation. Really recommend this formula if you like things that are light and glowy, but definitely like some more medium coverage because it like did give me coverage when I built it up, but I do feel like you can sheer it out as well. No fragrance, nothing that sensitized my skin. So I'm actually so happy with this formula. I'm so glad that I tried it. In terms of comparing it to like some other foundation formulas that I like, the Kosas Revealer has like a very similar finish and feel to it. Like this is definitely my kind of foundation, but the Kosas one definitely has like more of a heaviness to it. Like it can sit on the skin a little bit more and I have to do more work to blend this in. So I like this better than the Kosas one so far. I will have to continue using this, but it just sits a little bit lighter and thinner on the skin because it is a thinner consistency, especially in the smile lines and like chin area. It's just sitting so smoothly. And in terms of comparing it to the Haus Labs foundation, I actually feel like the Haus Labs foundation gave me less coverage than this MAC one. And that one, they're kind of hard to compare. The Haus Labs, it's like satin, but not really as satin as this one. Like this one makes you look really pretty and healthy. The Haus Labs one is kind of just like, I don't want to say flat, but it's slightly more of a matte finish than this MAC Studio Radiance one is. Studio Radiance, it's in the name. It gives you radiance in such a non-greasy way. So I am so excited for this foundation. I hope you enjoyed this wear test and found it helpful. I mentioned this in some of my other videos, but finding foundation formulas that you like, and then if you see a new launch that seems similar, you might end up liking it, which is definitely the case for me here. I love Serum thin, like gel-like foundations. They just sit the best on my texture. Historically, with like all of my favorite foundations have been similar to this, so it's like no wonder this one looks so good on my skin. I do feel like this is like an innovative new formula. I haven't tried anything that makes my skin look so healthy and wear so well. I'd love to know in the comments below if you're interested in trying this foundation. There's gonna be 2 videos on the screen here so we can keep hanging out together. 1 or 2, pick one of those and I will see you there. Bye.